Hello everyone, welcome to yet another sessions of the daily news analysis by SRIRAM'S IAS, where we take up the important articles featuring in the Hindu newspaper and break them down for our simplification. With this, let's take up the important articles of the day. The important articles which feature in the newspaper today of the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 17th June are on the screen. Let's take up the first article of the day. The first article, which appears in the third page of the newspaper, reads "Warm, sleepless nights in a concrete jungle." Now, this article talks about a very important concept which is quite in the news and has come up in discussions again, which is the concept of urban heat island. The article talks about the concept of urban heat island and UPSC already has asked a question on it in the mains examination of 2013, where the question was, bring out the causes for the formation of heat islands in the urban habitat of the world. So this question also shows the foresight of UPSC, where the importance of urban heat island was taken up in 2013 only by UPSC. Right, so this topic becomes important for us from the point of view of geography, from GS1 as well as some aspect of the prelims examination. So we'll first understand what is the urban heat island and what is the current news about it. Why has the discussion on urban heat island starting to happen again? So let's try to understand first what exactly is an urban heat island. Let's understand this through a diagram. Now, we know that the earth receives its energy from the sun's radiation. It receives heat via sun's radiation, and it also gives back this heat in the form of terrestrial radiation. This is a basic concept which most of us are aware of. If not, first let's understand this, that the energy is received by sun's radiation and also some amount of heat is radiated back by the surface of the earth via the concept of terrestrial radiation, right? So now what happens that there are two types of areas which are starting to develop, right? One are the rural areas, which generally does not have much impact of the urban development, right? Of the new age buildings, the concrete roads, the lessening of trees and parks. This phenomena is more visible in the city only and not in the rural areas. So what happens when these kind of areas develop, the surfaces that get developed, be it the concrete roads, the high buildings, the close compact buildings of the concrete buildings, what they do is that they trap heat inside them and they are unable to cool down faster. So what this does is that the heat which is being received throughout the day, and during the night, the surface and the buildings are not able to cool down that much efficiently and faster. So what happens is that the heat gets trapped in that particular city or that particular micro area, and this trapping of the heat due to these consequences is known as the urban heat island, which means that the urban spaces, because of the change in land use which has happened due to urbanization, traps the heat and creates a island around it of the heat. And what impact does it cause? It makes the surrounding 3 to 10 degrees hotter than the normal area, which would have been in a rural area where the terrestrial radiation is reflected back efficiently, and therefore as much as heat that is received, it is also cooling down that much efficiently. This is not able to be happened with the urban spaces, wherein heat absorption and retention is less in the rural area and greater absorption and retention is there in the urban area. That's what we saw. And the plant transpiration and water evaporation from the soil is also less in the greater in the urban area. And what happens is that when water is received in the urban in the rural area, due to the lack of concrete roads being there and normal soil being there, the water is also percolating down into the soil, which again improves the temperature of the area. but due to concrete roads and other such surfaces in the urban spaces, the water over here also is not able to reach to the soil, further impacting the heat of that particular urban space. So this is the concept of urban heat island, which happens primarily because of the changes in land use of this of the particular urban spaces and the rising extent of urbanization. So this is the snapshot of urban heat island. Let's look at a few things about it. What is urban heat island? Is where the temperature in a densely populated city is as much as 2 degrees higher than the suburban or rural areas. And heat islands can occupy year round during the day or night. And the urban-rural temperature differences are often largest during calm, clear evenings. This is because rural areas cool off faster at night than the cities, which retain much of the heat stored in roads, buildings and other structures. This is what we try to understand, that because of these structures which are present in the city, the urban heat island as an effect start to cause. Now what are the major causes behind the urban heat island? So this happens because of the materials used for the pavements, roads and roofs, such as concrete, asphalt, which we also call tar and bricks. All of these materials are able to trap the heat which is being received. They are opaque, do not transmit light, but have higher heat capacity and thermal conductivity than rural areas, which have more open spaces such as trees and grass. This difference causes the heat to be trapped. And the lack of evapotranspiration, as we saw in the city, leads to city experiencing higher temperatures than its surroundings. So this is another reason. The other reason is of the close construction of the buildings and buildings of skyscrapers. So we know that when you build the buildings very closely and also of great heights, what this does is that this makes the space very compact, and the heat when received is not very easily able to transmit back or escape that particular area. So this also becomes a reason. And other factor is the waste heat emitted from the vehicles, factories and air conditioners may add warmth to the surroundings, further exacerbating the heat island effect. So waste heat becomes a contributing factor to other major causes. And another contributing factor is the urban haze. The haze of air pollution. When air pollution mixes in the atmosphere and the particulate matter and the dust particles are unable to escape the atmosphere, even they contribute in trapping the heat. So when they hang over many cities, they act as a miniature greenhouse layer, preventing outgoing thermal radiation from the escaping from urban areas. So all of this come together and trap the heat in the urban spaces, creating the urban heat island effect. Now what is the impact that can be caused due to this urban heat island effect? Now first is the energy costs. When much of the heat would be trapped inside the urban spaces, much energy would be required to cool this down. So increases energy cost for air conditioning, and air pollution levels are also increased. Again, to purify that air as well, more energy would be required. And second important are the heat related illnesses which are caused. This is what the article has flagged off, that the data on accidental deaths and suicides in India released by the National Crime Records Bureau show that over the years, heat strokes have become the second leading cause of death from a natural force in India, with around 12,000 people being killed from 2011 to 2020 due to the condition. Now this is a startling data where in the last 10 years, deaths from natural causes, heat stroke is taking the second place, which shows the rising trend of people facing a lot of issues due to the urban heat island and the increased amount of heat that is being faced. And now why has the discussion started now with respect to this concept? We know that a lot of parts of India has been facing the concept of heat waves during the times of summer, and these heat waves have been faced to be more severe than ever before. And when we trace the reasons for the causes of these heat waves, urban heat island effects becomes a major cause for it. That is why the discussions on urban heat island effect have once again come into the fore, where the talks about understanding the urban heat island effect and mitigating the impacts of it have gained again more importance. Then again, how does it affect the health of the people, which the article talks about? When the house becomes hot and it is unable to cool down efficiently in the night, what happens is that the individual residing in the house, the body gets heated and the heart starts pumping to get rid of that sweat and to pump more blood to fight dehydration, especially if adequate water intake is not maintained. And in this case, when the heart is pumping more blood, people with weak hearts can result into cardiac failure as well. This has been observed by the experts, medical experts, as mentioned in the article, and this talks about the grave impacts that this concept of urban heat island can have. So let's talk about the other impacts that we were on. Other impact is about the poor air quality as well. When the heat is trapped, they often have lower air quality because there are more pollutants. As we saw, the waste heat which is increasing. So that is a big impact of urban heat island. And then poor water quality as well, as we had seen in the diagram, where the water is not able to correctly percolate down to the soil, and the warm water, which is unusually warm than the natural temperature, goes into the local streams, which also impacts the marine environment. And colonization by heat-loving species. This means that those species which are more prone to living into the heat conditions, hot conditions, find a favorable space to grow. And these species such as lizards and geckos and insects such as ants become more abundant in these rural areas. So this also becomes an impact. And the other impact is that, which the article is talking about, is that of heat waves. Because of the heat being received and not being able to transmit it back into the atmosphere efficiently, the space becomes extremely hot and the region tends to face more number of heat waves. So that becomes an important impact of the urban heat island, which is starting to have serious consequence of the individual's health of the city. Now, what can be done to mitigate the impacts of the urban heat island effect? First of all, if the effect is caused due to construction of houses with respect to certain materials, the materials can be changed and green infrastructure can be promoted. So green infrastructure such as green roofs, where the roofs of buildings are covered with environmental sustainable materials such as the plants or other those things such as light colored concrete, which does not trap heat but is able to transmit it back into the atmosphere. So all of these substances and roofs such as plant roofs or green roofs should be used to mitigate the impact of urban heat island. And other is planting trees, of course. Planting more trees has more than one benefits. They combat climate change, clean the surrounding air by absorbing the pollutant gases such as nitrogen oxide, ozone, sulfur dioxide and other many gases, and trapping particulates on their leaves and bark, cool the city and the streets and conserve energy as well, because they are cutting air conditioning costs by 50%, save water and help prevent water pollution as well, and even help the soil erosion and help improve the soil conditions. So planting trees, like I said, has more than one benefit which needs to be regimentedly taken care of. With respect to this, center is currently working with 23 heat wave prone states and over 133 cities to implement a heat action plan. The heat action plan is still in works, not much concrete work has been done on it, but the center is working with the states to formulate such a plan. So this was a discussion based on urban heat island effect, which is a very important concept that has come into the public discussion again, because it impacts day-to-day lives and health of all the residents of the major cities. So with this, let's move on to the next article of the day. The next article which features in the newspaper talks about the sovereign gold bond scheme, which features on page number 15 of the newspaper. Now, sovereign gold bond scheme is a very important scheme because this has been featured repeatedly in the prelims examination. And we study it from the perspective of GS3 or economy portion. So, let's try to understand what exactly is the sovereign gold bond scheme, what is to be achieved through the sovereign gold bond scheme, and what are some of its important points. So, what is the scheme? It was launched in November 15 with an objective to reduce the demand for physical gold and shift a part of the domestic savings that is used for purchase of gold into financial savings. Now, why was this done? The need for shifting from physical gold to another aspect of gold is because as Indians, we know that there is a tendency to buy a lot of gold because of the intrinsic value of gold and use it as savings. But what impact it creates on the economy is that a lot of gold has to be imported into the country, and this increases the import costs for the Indian economy. To decrease these import costs, government tried to promulgate a scheme which lessens the dependence on physical gold by bringing out a sovereign gold bond scheme, which would sort of try to fulfill their need for domestic savings, wherein they start to save using the gold bond scheme and not buying physical gold as well. Now, how can they do this? Let's understand. First, how and who issues them? So, the gold bonds are issued as Government of India stock under the government securities. So, gold bonds are nothing but securities. A piece of paper guaranteeing a value of money with respect to certain amount of gold. So, they are issued by the RBI on behalf of the Government of India, and they are sold through various centers such as commercial banks, Stock Holding Corporation of India Limited, designated post office and recognized stock exchange like the National Stock Exchange of India Limited, the Bombay Stock Exchange, and either also through agents. So, these are the multiple centers which can issue are sold the bonds issued by the RBI and sold by these centers. Now, what are the features as to how will this gold bond scheme work? So, first of all, there is a issue price in this bond, which are linked to the price of gold of 999 purity, which is the 24 karat gold published by, this is 99.9% purity, published by India Bullion and Jewellers Association Mumbai. So, they attach the price of the gold bond to the price of gold, which is of the 24 karat gold purity, and they attach that price to that of the bond. And what is the investment limit on the bond? They can be purchased in the multiples of 1 unit of gold up to a certain thresholds for different investors. And the upper limit for retail or individual investors and Hindu undivided families, or what we call HUFs, is 4 kilograms, which means that these entities at a time can buy gold bonds worth the unit of 4 kg of golds or 4,000 units each per financial year. For trusts and other bigger entities, an upper limit of 20 kilograms per financial year is applicable. So, this is the investment limit on the gold bond scheme, and the minimum permissible investment is 1 gram of gold. So, that which is what? It starts from 1 unit. And how much is the term for the bond? The gold bonds come with a maturity period of 8 years with an option to exit the investment after the first 5 years. So, these bonds can be bought for a maximum period of 8 years with the limit of exiting the investment after the first 5 years. So, this means that the scheme was brought so that normal residents of the country can, in order to fulfill their savings perspective with respect to gold, instead of buying gold, can buy these gold bonds. But can we see a problem in this? Are there any benefits with respect to this? Let's look at some of the benefit. The benefits of buying such bonds can be that they can be used as collateral for loans. So at least when we talk about using the savings, their use has been facilitated for that they can be used for as collateral of loans. And the capital gains tax arising on redemption of sovereign gold bond to an individual has been exempted. So when you buy the gold, the capital gains tax on redemption of these bonds has been exempted. So tax exemption has also been attached to it. And redemption is the act of an issuer repurchasing a bond at or before maturity. So this was redemption of sovereign gold bond, as we were seeing. And what is the capital gains tax? Is the profit earned on the sale of an asset like stocks, bonds or real estate. Who collects this tax? Capital gains tax would be collected by the government based on the profit earned on the assets such as stocks, bonds or real estate, and it results in when the selling price of an asset exceeds its purchase price. So this particular tax has been exempted under the sovereign gold bond scheme, right? So these are some of the benefits which the government has tried to attach to the sovereign gold bond scheme. But can we find any disadvantages with respect to the scheme? When we talk about urging citizens to not buy physical gold and buy pieces of bond for with respect to that gold, does it really amount to the same thing? People who buy physical gold and have the need for it seldom can suffice the need with respect to bond papers. So that is why this is a long-term investment, unlike physical gold which can be sold immediately. And a lot of other uses which the physical gold uses, those are not contained in the sovereign gold bond scheme. That is why that becomes as a major harming factor. But people who are not interested in the physical gold and want to take avail of the benefits of sovereign gold bond scheme, they can take advantage of the scheme. Second disadvantage is the sovereign gold bonds are listed on exchange, but trading volumes are not high. Therefore, it will be difficult to exit before maturity. So the trading volumes on the stock exchanges are not high. That also becomes one of their disadvantages. So this is the discussion on sovereign gold bond scheme, which the article says is that RBI is going to issue out fresh tranches for these sovereign gold bonds, which can be bought by the residents and individuals as well as entities. With this, let's move on to the next article of the day. The next article which appears in the newspaper talks about the move to link credit cards with UPI. Now UPI as a concept becomes very important from the point of view of examination, from the perspective of GS3, and which has been repeatedly focused on by UPSC in the prelims examination, asking questions with the various aspects of UPI. So now what has been the new move with respect to the UPI? First of all, the new move has been that where currently the UPI was linked to savings or current account through debit cards, normally when we do UPI transactions, our accounts are attached through the debit cards, but the new move is attaching the account to the credit cards as well. Now why has this been done? First, let's look at some of the successful points about UPI in the country, which is reflected by this data where 26 crore unique users use the UPI mode and 5 crore merchants use the services of UPI to take transactions, perform transaction and receive money. And in the month of May 2022 itself, 594 crore transactions were done, amounting to 10.4 lakh rupees worth of transactions in just 1 month. This shows the amount of penetration of UPI and also the success of it. So therefore, to extend the success of this service, RBI is extending the service of UPI from debit card to credit cards as well. Now what can happen by extending this service to the credit cards as well? Already people were linking their accounts to debit cards and they were able to pay. What additional benefits can they avail from the credit card UPI scheme as well? So additional benefit can be, first can be the additional avenue of payment. One another avenue is added for those who use credit cards more often. They can use, they also get an avenue of payment through UPI. It also will further deepen the use of credit cards. So people who were earlier using credit cards, more number of people can be facilitated to use those cards since now they are linked to UPI. And another issue another benefit that people can face is people use credit cards to avail longer payback period. That is the feature of credit card, where you swipe the credit card and buy a good or a service and you pay the price for it later. Now they can do so via the UPI without touching their savings account. So it gives them a handy option of using the credit cards with UPI to not touch their savings account or take the service of the credit card. The main benefit of this service can be wherein a lot of places, especially in the urban or semi-urban or rural areas, where the machines that we use to swipe these credit cards, which are also called as point of sale machines, they are not available. So people who rely on credit cards are not able to use the credit cards at that juncture. But what now can be done is, but a lot of those merchants now start to use UPI. So these people who rely on credit cards now can be facilitated to use UPI in those semi-urban and rural centers where these merchants do not have the machines, but they do have UPI. And another is many people use credit cards for rewards. So credit cards are used by many people for rewards attached to them, and UPI is used for the ease and security of the transaction. By linking the two, people can make use of both benefits at once. So this is some of the benefits of the new move that is the RBI is doing with respect to linking the credit cards with the UPI as well. Currently, only the RuPay cards, which are issued by National Payments Corporation of India, would be linked with the UPI first, and then other credit card companies and services will also be taken into the fold. So this is the information with respect to the UPI linking of the credit card. With this, we come to end of today's session. We'll meet again tomorrow with the important articles of the day. Thank you.